one day I just said, I gotta figure out what I'm so afraid of, because I knew all the anxiety was fear. I knew that everything that was happening was a fear reaction. I was reacting to life out of fear instead of out of love. And I just had to figure out what I was afraid of. And I remember I sat down and I kind of drew on a piece of paper, a little stick figure. I have no idea where this came from, but I was guided to do it. And I drew a stick figure and I went to the bottom, the little foot of the stick figure, and I wrote down my first fear.
On the beautiful side of grief today, we have a guest who survived not only 2 near-death experiences, but also 2 shared death experiences, all of which left her the ability to heal her own anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So she will share with us how that occurred and how you can tap into the healing energy yourself. Cathy Gabrielsen is my guest today and naturally works as a healer, but also as a spiritual teacher, Ayurvedic health coach, Vedic meditation teacher, graduate teacher of energy medicine, plus many more modalities, helping others to transform and heal emotional, spiritual, and physical wounds. And because we're not going to get through all the invaluable insights she has to share in this hour, because honestly, there is so much she can share, she has also authored a book, Dying to Live, How to Survive a Near-Death Experience. So what I suggest to you is that you grab a copy of this #1 bestseller and fill in the gaps that we don't get around to. So a very warm welcome to you, Cathy. So great to have you with us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you today, too. Thank you so much for having me.
So what I thought we'd start off with is, I'm dying to get into all these incredible experiences you've had. But firstly, can you share with us what your life was like prior to your first near-death experience?
Prior to my first near-death experience, I was just an average girl, one of 5 children in our family, a really close-knit family, very religious. My parents, we went to a Catholic school, went to church every Sunday, and I was really quiet and really shy. And I was a twin sister, so I relied on my twin to be the social butterfly, and I kind of was under her wing a lot. But it was, a really nice life. I was always really drawn to the spirit world since I was a little girl. I really thought that I knew God at a really young age, and I thought it was weird that no one else talked about it or knew it. But yeah, I was pretty average, just an average, nice life.
So when you talk about knowing God, what did that look like for you? Was it just this inner knowing, or was it like you actually had communication already at those young ages?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was more of an inner knowing, but also I would feel as though I knew him in a way that was different than I was being taught. So I was being taught to fear him, but I couldn't understand why when I felt like I saw him as a child, that he was loving and kind. And I remember looking at pictures of him and thinking, why does everybody think you're so mean? Why do they think that you're such a mean God sometimes and punish people? And I remember when I was in first grade and we were asked to write a picture or draw a picture of heaven. And I can remember when I drew my picture was unlike anybody else's. Everyone else had, rainbows and rivers and lollipops and flowers. And mine was angels taking care of sick people. So there was sick
Wow.
people in beds and angels taking care of the people. That was kind of like that book Madeline, where they were all lined up and everybody had somebody with them. And I remember my teacher, Sister Geraldine, she was so sweet. She just thought it was the funniest picture. And I remember she was showing it to the other teacher across the hall. She used to call me Katrina. Look at how she drew, look how Katrina drew heaven. That's so funny. And I kept saying, but that's what it's like. That's what it's like.
Wow.
And I remember when we were in that same class, we were taught to pray for our future, and that if God was calling us to be a nun, that we should listen. And I remember wondering how we would know And the Sister Geraldine said, we'll feel it in our heart. We'll feel the calling in our heart. And I remember very vividly sitting in that desk with my hands folded and having a conversation with God and hearing him call me in my heart that day.
Oh, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Did your twin sister experience the same type of connection?
No.
Anyone else in your family?
No, I know I had like the ability to sometimes see things before they were happen. If my twin sister was going to fall, I'd holler out, you're going to fall as she fell, that kind of stuff, but not really significant. I just felt really spiritual. I loved the saints. It would be All Saints Day and we got to dress up as a saint and it was my favorite day of the year. I loved it. I really did.
Oh, that's so special. So let's get into your first NDE because, I find it unbelievable that you've had all of these experiences. So share with us your first near-death experience and take us through what you experienced with that. Like, how did it happen and then what you experienced?
Yeah. So when I had my first near death experience, I was just 18 years old, a senior in high school, and with my boyfriend. And just going to shut some. I was with my boyfriend, and it was a fall night in November. It was chilly. I live outside Philadelphia in the United States, and it was a cold fall night. The leaves were on the ground, and we were going around a winding curve. And
Mm-hmm.
as we went around a winding curve, right before that, I noticed that I thought my boyfriend saw a police car, and he wasn't doing anything bad, but I think that he may have thought the police might be coming after him. I don't know. It was just this weird energy in the car. But I remember he accelerated and he went faster around the curve. And I just heard this loud voice in my head that said, "Put your seatbelt on." So I put my seatbelt on really fast. And as I put mine on, I screamed to my boyfriend to put his seatbelt on, but he didn't. And we ended up going off the road into a really deep ravine, a muddy, deep
Oh,
ravine. And when we were in the ravine, it was just mud and sticks and dirt and dead leaves everywhere. And it was dark. It was dark. And felt like we were in this capsule of mud. And I remember just screaming and crying. Where are we? Crying out, like, what happened? Where are we? And he was just moaning. He was like over the steering wheel, kind of moaning. There was no windshield, no glass in the car. I somehow had shattered the windshield with my face, and I just remember blood everywhere. And we were in that car for a while. It felt like an eternity. But
mm-hmm.
then somebody appeared to my window and said they were going to get help. And I just remember being in the car and in the quiet, and then really just seeing the stars and really connecting with the light of the stars and feeling a really strong pull, really, to go to the other side, as it was if I was supposed to go there. There wasn't there wasn't like a big dark tunnel that I've seen in a shared death experience, but there was like a tunnel vacuumy like pull, it felt like. And I went with it. And the next thing I knew, I was in a different space. I wasn't in the car. I was in this space. And there were beings there, and they were having a conversation, it felt like, talking about me. And I kind of was like, I'm right here. Right here. You're talking about me. But it felt like they were healing me at the same time. It felt like I was being healed, like they were fixing me, like fixing me up and talking about whether or not I was going to stay or I had to go back. And they ended up I ended up coming back hearing that I had work I had to do when I came back. And I understood that I had healing work to do when I came back. I had more work to do. And in retrospect, I look back and I think it was my grandfather saying it would be too hard for my dad if I stayed there. And so I came back, and I remember never telling anybody, never telling anybody about the experience. I was too afraid of what they were going to think. My boyfriend had been resuscitated not almost 9 times that night, or that's what I was told by his family. And he was traumatically brain injured. And I just didn't want to talk about my experience, And I was afraid that people would think I'm crazy. And I remember the nurse in the room wanting to tell her, thinking about telling her, saying some things, but never really sharing with anybody my experience until years later, years and years and years later. Um, yeah, that was my first one.
So, can you remember what those beings looked like to you? Did you
They
recognize them?
People ask me that all the time. I didn't recognize this cluster of beings that seemed to have. I look back and I'm sure they were my guides. I'm sure I knew them. I could sense the healing presence. I could sense the light, and it was an understanding more so. My second experience was much more profound, but this one, it was just a sense of an understanding. I could see the light. I knew I was in a magical place. It felt really good. I felt like I was all healed and better. And so when I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't understand why I wasn't back to myself because I thought that they had done the healing on the other side to me, which they did. I'm sure that I was healed in ways that I'll never know from them.
Because the fact that you died and went to that place means that you had significant injuries. And
Yeah.
so maybe it
Yeah.
was enough for you. And you still had to go through that journey of suffering those injuries, if that makes sense. So you mentioned that your purpose here was to do healing and to be a healer for
Yes.
others. So you didn't share the story with anyone. So were you guided naturally onto that path of healing, or did you come back with healing gifts, or how did that work for you? How did you know to be guided in the right direction as far as healing was concerned? So how did you know what your path was?
I didn't. I knew then that I had to come back and heal. And the understanding was, and I sure wish I talked about my near death experience earlier and I didn't just bury it
Mm.
because I'm sure I would have had so much more awareness had I had talked to somebody about what I heard. And because it was so buried, I don't remember all of it, but I remembered it in the moment. I remember how powerful it was. And I remember the bits and pieces. And I knew I was told in some way there that I had to come back and heal, that I had to do healing work. But they never said, this is how it's going to look. I just knew that I had to come back and I understood. It was like just an understanding being there that I had to help heal my brain injured boyfriend. And it was
Mm.
like, that was what I had to do. And so when I came back, I remember I went to church every day, wanting to know if I was doing it right. Was this the only thing I needed to heal? What was I supposed to be doing? And I went to go visit my boyfriend every single day. Every day. I was just a senior in high school, and every day after school, I went to go see him and spend hours with him because I truly believed that my hands or my presence, that something about me being there was going to help him. And I went day after day, year after year. I didn't go away to college. I ended up staying home and commuting and truly believing that I was helping him. And so I was just waiting for the day for him to wake up and be okay. He was in a coma for a long time and ended up living for almost 20 years with just the ability to blink his eyes. So he would only blink, one long blink for no and lots of blinks for yeses. And I showed up every day thinking it might be the day that he would just somehow or another miraculously heal. And then I started to go into a depression and I had a tremendous amount of survivor's guilt because I survived this accident. I could live my life. And he was in a hospital bed in his, rehab centers and, his mom, then living in his mom's house and cared for by nurses and could only blink his eyes. And I thought I was supposed to help him and I wasn't ever helping him. And when he died, I went into a really dark place because I really thought that I failed God. I thought I failed him and that somehow I didn't get the message right about healing. And then I thought I must have been crazy. And what I thought was the truth and what I thought that night wasn't the truth because I didn't I didn't heal him. He ended up dying. And in retrospect, when I look back and look back on my life and my experiences and what I was doing in the room, I was healing him in the ways that he needed healing in all those moments by just having an open heart and compassion and love and presence. So it took me a long time to realize that. I suffered with a lot of guilt and fear that I wasn't doing the work I was called to do.
Oh, wow. So, had you still not told anybody before you had your second near death experience? And just lead us into how that all happened, how you ended up having yet another one, and what
Yeah.
that revealed to you.
Well, I lived for many years with a tremendous amount of grief, sadness, anxiety, guilt, shame, feeling like I failed God, I failed my boyfriend, and I just went into a dark hole. I ended up getting breast cancer when I was 32, and I had two young babies, and I just never really took care of myself. My heart was literally filled with grief for so many years. Grief, sadness at myself, sadness at the loss of my friendship and my relationship with my boyfriend, and grief over feeling like a failure to God. And so I truly believe that all those negative feelings in my heart for so long really wasn't healthy for me. It was like just a heavy, heavy heart. And I ended up developing breast cancer, and I had a lot of complications after the breast cancer, a lot of surgeries. And so I was on my 14th surgery, and it was after that surgery that I just was a young mom, pushing myself, doing too much, not allowing myself to feel and heal. And I ended up getting a terrible infection in the breast that they had operated on, and I developed sepsis. And it was during the sepsis that I was having I was in the hospital for a week, and I couldn't breathe. And I kept telling the doctors I couldn't breathe. And and they said, oh, that happens after surgery. And I knew because I had 14 and I could breathe. And this time I couldn't breathe and I could barely talk. And I just felt like nobody was listening to me. And I knew I was dying. I could feel it. And I know I was dying because I had been on the other side before, and I could feel the pull. And this time I could see more of a light. And I could see myself like kind of going and leaving, and I'm hovering and looking at myself. And I remember I told my mom, she came to the hospital, and I said, I'm dying. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, oh, yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. And I didn't know it at the time, but what was happening was the doctor, when they did the surgery, they clipped some blood vessel. And so I was bleeding internally. And so that was, for some reason, wherever I moved, I don't know where the blood went, but it was filling up my lungs and putting pressure on something that was making it difficult to breathe. But long story short is I decided that it was to go. It was like,
Yeah.
I just felt that peace and love. And it was so helpful in that near death experience. Because I had worked with the cancer community for a number of years. I started a nonprofit after my cancer experience, and I work with families and saw the grief and the loss that they had. And one of the most valuable lessons I learned a lot of valuable lessons, but it was for people that are living. When they see people suffering in their death, we look at them and we see them only as suffering, but they are not. There's a part of them that is experiencing this peace and this light. Because I looked like I was suffering. I looked like I was in pain, but there was a part of me that thought everybody here is going to be okay. And I just was overwhelmed with a sense of peace that everyone here would be okay. My kids would be okay. Everybody would be okay. And I just wanted to go into that light. And so I did. And then when I went that time, I had done so much service work. I took care of my boyfriend, and I worked for the brain injury community. I started this nonprofit to help families with cancer, and I did that for years. And so when I died the second time, I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to get in, there's no question here. So when I got to the other side, it felt this time like a welcoming home party. So when I first went through, it was like I saw all these people that I knew, some people I recognized, some not, but it was just a huge amount of people. And then I just went on, and I remember seeing saints and angels, and then hearing the most beautiful music. And at that time, I saw the master healer and his mother, and I remember seeing him. We when we die, we see our version of God. So
Hmm.
however that is, I saw my version of God, and that I saw Jesus. And so I remember seeing him and walking towards him, and I was crying, and I was so happy to see him. And I was in his arms, and he was hugging me, and he was shaking his head. And he said, "It's just not your time. You have more
Oh,
work to do." And I knew, I must have agreed, because I came back. And when I came back that time, I had terrible anxiety. I mean, debilitating anxiety and depression and PTSD, because I had been rejected by the light a second time. And I just, in my opinion, I was really failing God. How could I not get in? How could I not be a good enough person to get in? But what it was, I realized the work I had to do was to help to heal people, to heal broken hearts, to help heal their suffering, to use the gifts that I received from the light to help other people. But what I hadn't done all my life was helped myself, was take care of myself, was get to know myself. Because I really can't, we can't support other people and everybody on your podcast. There's so many people here that have helped people through grief. We can't, it's hard to help people. We have to be full ourselves. And I truly couldn't do the work I was able to do because I just hadn't done myself. I hadn't taken care of myself enough to give to other people. And that was a really great lesson. So I had to figure myself out and figure out who I was. And in figuring out who I was able to figure out the work that I needed to do.
that's an incredible story, seriously. And I completely understand why you would have felt guilty coming back, especially with all those early childhood experiences you
Yeah.
had. And oh my gosh. And yeah, rejected
Yeah.
twice. Yeah, that feeling of rejection, abandonment. Tell me, what is that feeling of love over the other side? Can you describe that? Is it
I,
anything like you felt here?
Oh, I can feel it now because what I realized is that power and that light and that love is available to all of us. We have to just
Mhm,
breathe it in. We have to just open ourselves to it. And that's
mhm.
really what I did. Am able to, oh, how does it feel? It's just pure and utter bliss. It's just the most blissful, light feeling you could ever imagine. And I wish I could just say give an example of what it exactly feels like, but I just can't, other than it's truly the greatest feeling when you get into it and you feel it. It's everything. It's peace. It's love. It's acceptance. It's joy. It's, it's, it's having let go of there's no worries. There's no fear. There's nothing except just pure love, light, and peace, and happiness, and joy. It's an unbelievable feeling. It's an unbelievable feeling.
And then you come back to anxiety, depression, PTSD,
Oh, it's,
the exact opposite. That, yeah. But I imagine because, when I think about all of the things I've gone through, they're teaching you something, aren't they? It's almost like when I work with people in a healing capacity, I have so much empathy and understanding of what they're going through. It's like they don't need to explain to me. I just get it. And
yeah,
I don't think you can get it. And I don't think that they can feel that you get it unless they sense, yeah, we're on the same wavelength here. You understand.
yeah,
And so I think those are a really important, vital lessons. Before I forget, let's also talk about what shared death experiences are.
yeah, yeah. And just for the record, Helen, I imagine that you experienced the love of that light. Yeah,
Ah,
I know you do. I know you do.
oh, do
And
you
you're
know
asking
what?
me, but you know exactly I know you know exactly what that feels like because it's coming through to you, you know?
Like it's my
Yeah.
girl. She wrapped me up in a cocoon of love for
Yes.
6 months after she died at
Oh,
18.
children. Yeah.
And because she knew that she was my life. She was my everything. And she knew that I would not want to be here without her being a part of it. And so she said, "No, Mama, it's not your time yet. I've done everything I need to do, but you need to trust me." And so she's just taken me on this incredible journey, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. This is
Yes.
a journey.
Yes. And to your
Yeah.
point with this beautiful experience, the beautiful side of grief that you have, right?
Yeah.
Is the experience the worst thing? I had to stop saying like, oh, I know why me or what.
Mm.
I just had to say, what is it for? Because as soon as I figure out, and that's like the kind of the biggest lesson for every time something happens to us in life, whether it's big or small, it's like there is a love lesson. And we just have to know we have to know what it is. I have to ask myself every time I'm in the middle of a hardship, whether it's, with money or my kids or whatever, what is it for? What is this for?
Yeah.
And clearly you're changing lives. You're healing. The work that you do is incredible with the gift and the blessing of your connection with your daughter and how you two work as a team. And two, the power and the presence of spirit that the energy and the love doesn't disappear. We just lose the physical body.
The interesting thing is that I did not believe in anything, any religion or anything like that. I was spiritual to a degree. However, I've just gone on this incredible journey and it's made me just stop and think and examine, like you say, not asking why, but what is behind all of this? What do I need to do? And when I was veering off path, man, I was sharply brought back into line. Like, you're not doing this. And then when I had to realize that part of me getting sick is an indication for me that I'm not on the right path. I get sick when I'm not on the right path.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's a big wake up call. Ah, my gosh. And I'm glad I'm so in awe of you because you're doing incredible work. And I looked at your website and I go, oh, look at everything that you do and the way you are transforming lives. And what a privilege it is to be in
For
your
sure.
company and to be sharing this journey together. I'm really
I
honored
was
doing
going to say,
that.
it's a privilege to be with you. And I was thinking it's a privilege to work with spirit. It's a privilege to
Yeah,
work with
gosh,
spirit. It sure is. It's a
beyond.
blessing that we're all open to. Everyone has the ability to receive it. They just have to believe it and accept it and trust it. Believe
Yeah.
that it's real and accept that they're worthy and trust that it's there for them. But,
Yes. Being worthy and trusting, two
yeah,
really
yeah,
huge
yeah.
things, because I think they are barriers to a lot of people being able to feel this for themselves, because that was what I had to learn. I remember at 13 declaring to the world, I swore a little and I just said, I don't trust anybody except myself. The only person I can trust in this world is myself. Man, I had to spend so many years undoing all of that because I didn't let people get close to me. I didn't let, your opportunities would come and I'll go, oh, no, I don't trust that. I lived in a state of distrust. And so I believe that is what people need to give themselves grace for. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, what has happened to you. What matters is the here and now and how you can go forward. And we can all then step into the state of trusting and believing and being worthy.
So spot on. So true. Someone said, what is healing? If you could sum it up in one word. And I said, trust. Trusting
Yeah.
yourself, trusting the experience is for you. It's something greater in this, trusting the support. And it really is about trust and worth. I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't agree with you more on that.
I believe, because I've had chronic illnesses and recovered from them, and I understand that trust and that you have to be open and willing to heal before you actually can heal. That's a big thing. That was a big aha moment for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Yeah.
understanding that actually it has to come from within. I have to be ready. I have to be ready to make those changes. And I have to be, just not expecting it all to happen from external sources. And that's where
Yeah.
I say to people always, this, you will get what you want out of this
Yeah.
experience. And it
Yeah.
can be profound, or it can be just another modality that you try that's not
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my religion, it was a gift because I was able to connect to Mary and connect and experience all these experiences. But at the same time, I was afraid to tell people about my experiences because it went against my religion,
Yes.
so that was really hard. And I remember my mom said, don't tell anybody what you do. And I thought to myself, I just wrote a book. So people are going to know, you know?
Are you feeling lost, anxious, unsure of how to navigate the loss of your beautiful loved one? Don't know where to head next? Yeah, I get that. Then you may be interested in the new offering I've developed, a letter of hope and aroha, to help you find out who you are right here and now and how you can navigate that without being on that emotional roller coaster, feeling out of control. That's a feeling I really disliked after Tal and then Adrian died. So I've developed an 8-week support program where each week you get an email of what worked for me, as well as other tried and true tools to help with grief. It's a beautiful, calming, healing resource that I think you're really going to like and that you can use in your everyday life to find out what works for you and what doesn't. And the great thing is, you find yourself feeling stronger and more in control so you can work out what you want life to look like going forward. So if this sounds like something you would like to check out, head over to my website or check out the link in the episode notes. You're looking for a letter of hope and aroha.
And you had asked me about shared death experiences.
Yeah.
And the first shared death experience I had was when my dad was sick. And it was also the first time I really vocalized what I was seeing and experiencing because I was with my brothers and sisters and my mom when my dad was passing. And it was the first time I had experienced a shared death. And I didn't have the name for it until after I realized I had gone through it. But as he was passing, I knew he was passing. I could see his spirit moving and going and coming back. But what I was focused on was seeing the hands and who was coming for him from the other side and encouraging him to take the hands because we all have your daughter. Everybody has someone that helps them cross over, someone that's with them. And I was encouraging him to take a hold of the hands that were there. And I could see him grasp them and I could see him sing over with them. And right when he touched their hand, he started to cry. And I knew who he saw. I knew who he saw in that moment and who was there with him. And it was really, really, really powerful. I had another experience, another shared death experience with a dear friend of mine who was dying of cancer. And had the fortunate opportunity of being with her by her side in the days leading up to her death and then in her crossing. And hers was extremely, it was like the second near death was more powerful than the first. And the second was kind of like a lead up, like that I would trust that this is really happening. And she was terrified of dying. And I know my dad was terrified of dying too. It's that crossing over for some people. We both know that it's not about acceptance, that everyone is welcome to that space. But my one dear friend was terrified of not being accepted into heaven. And she was afraid she was going to be lost. She was afraid of the journey to heaven. She was afraid of being lost and who was she going to know and who was she going to be with? And she was terrified. In the days leading up to it, I would astral travel with her and show her how she could go visit her daughter at school or she could go back home where she lived and just encouraging her that she would be at peace. And she wasn't really talking at that moment, but I knew that she was worried. So I was talking and whispering in her ear and holding her hand and telling her. And I knew she was afraid of not knowing anybody. So I woke up one morning after sleeping there, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I knew I could feel the presence of spirit in the room. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go up to her. I'm going to introduce her to everybody that's here. And I remember sitting next to her and saying, now, when you cross over, these people are going to come for you. And I called in all my guides, and they all lined up one by one, and they introduced themselves to her. And that was really, really powerful. And the night she died, she held on, and I knew she started having an anxiety attack. And I knew it was time. And I said, is it time? She didn't answer me, but I knew we were going. And I said, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. And I told her months before she died that I would be with her and I would take her to the other side. I mean, not really even realizing what that experience was going to be like, but I said it because I wanted to comfort her and know that she wasn't going to be alone. But that night I saw her standing in front of the tunnel, and it was a big black tunnel, and that tunnel was long. And I didn't have that specific experience when I died. Mine was a different experience, but she was standing in front of this tunnel, and she was terrified to go through the tunnel. My guess, it was some lesson for her, that one last thing that she had to do before she crossed over. I don't know, but I held her hand, and she ran through the tunnel, and then she turned around and ran back out. And then she ran through the tunnel, started to run through the tunnel, and then turned around and came back. And I knew she was doing it, and she kept going and coming back just like a scared little kid. And I said to her, Cammy, just don't stop. Well, go, just don't stop. Keep running. And oh God, I just was with her as she ran and ran and ran and ran. And then all of a sudden it was a beautiful explosion of light. And I just felt the presence of the divine energy and the light. And then a whole group of people came and lined up to greet her, just like what she saw. All these people, all these people. And then I turned and saw the master healer again. And that's her God. And then I said, there he is. And I just came back. And I think I came home on that night, and I sat in silence from like midnight until 3 o'clock in the morning, because it was the biggest gift I've ever received in my life. And it was an honor, and it was a privilege, and a reminder that heaven and the access to it is available to all of us,
Oh my
even when we're
gosh.
alive. Yeah.
That is such an unbelievable story. That is incredible. What does spirit look like when you can see spirit leaving the body? What does that look like to you?
What does it look like? When I see the spirit leaving the body, it's the essence of the person. You can feel it. You can feel the lift. You can feel the energy lift. And it's literally as you're just seeing a version of them. I see a version of them. It's not dense though. Doesn't look like it's dense, but it looks like it's them. It looks exactly
Yeah,
like them, but they don't have their body, but they're in the kind of the
yeah,
shape of their body. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that does
See
make
it,
sense
sense
to
it.
me.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is such an incredible story. I'm just in awe of you, in awe of you. But you mentioned about your friend having fear.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we haven't discussed fear, but I believe fear is another one of those big, huge walls that we have to knock down to be able to move forward, to be able to find that real sense of peace, calm, and happiness. Talk to us, because you've got tips for, feeling alive again after loss. And a lot of people are fearful when their loved one goes, that they are, like you said, in that state of pain and agony that they experienced in their last few moments on earth. And so talk to us about the role of fear in this whole journey
Yeah.
as you
Fear.
see it.
Oh, yeah. Fear. We talked about trust, and we talked about self-worth, and fear is a big one because it's love over fear, faith over fear. We have to choose the alternative. I was terribly afraid. I was afraid of dying because wasn't going to, if I died, I wouldn't get in the light. I was afraid of not knowing what my work and my purpose was here. I obviously wasn't doing it because I wasn't getting in. I was so afraid. I had so much anxiety. But in order for me to let go of the fear, I had to know what I was so afraid of. What I was afraid of. I had to really make peace with my fear and find out what it was, because fear, shame, guilt, feelings of no self-worth or value, they're low vibes. They're low vibe. They come from our lower self. They're low vibe. Healing is not going to happen when you're circling those emotions. And so one of the things I know about heaven is that or the other side, or whatever you want to call it, the way that you get there is truly by losing the attachments to life, to the things that we're attached to, the fear of. That fear of, what are you afraid of? What is moving that fear? I had to let go of the fear because fear was taking over me. I didn't know it in that moment, that fear wouldn't get me very far, but I sure know it now. And fear is a big block. It's like an anchor that holds us down.
Mhm.
So if we want to experience bliss, joy, connection to spirit, our loved ones that are on the other side, we have to make peace with the fear. We have to know what we're afraid of. I remember when I truly believe this was a divinely guided exercise. One day I just said, I gotta figure out what I'm so afraid of, because I knew all the anxiety was fear. I knew that everything that was happening was a fear reaction. I was reacting to life out of fear instead of out of love. And I just had to figure out what I was afraid of. And I remember I sat down and I kind of drew on a piece of paper a little stick figure. I have no idea where this came from, but I was guided to do it. And I drew a stick figure and I went to the bottom, the little foot of the stick figure, and I wrote down my first fear and what my first fear was. And I wrote my first fear. And I was just a little girl. And I was afraid I was going to let my mom down, or maybe I would get a spanking, or I was afraid that Sister Geraldine wouldn't like my handwriting. And I would go through all these fears until I'm, some 50-some-year-old woman, and what I was afraid of. And when I looked at all my fears, I was terribly afraid of the same thing. If I looked at every one of them, and that would be the fear of letting somebody down, not
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
enough for them. And I learned that was my driving fear in life from every obstacle, everything I did. If I separated myself and said, oh, I know why I'm doing that. I'm doing that because in the end, I'm afraid they won't be happy with me or they won't like it. And it was the fear of letting somebody down. Because if I let somebody down, maybe then I wouldn't feel loved. So the love is the opposite of fear. You just have to find the love over the fear. And a lot of people move through life in fear because they're afraid of feeling something. Usually it's not love,
Yeah. And
acceptance.
something else I think that people need to be aware of is the influence of our past lives and our others' soul incarnations. And because it's funny, I connect with a girlfriend over in the States every single week, just about, and we are so aligned. It is crazy. We share the same energy. And just yesterday, we were saying, look, it feels like we've both been through like the Holocaust or something like that, and that we're both like nurses and unable to help these people. And that's what we feel in this life, the stuckness around like being able to help people and letting people down, and we didn't save them and we're not worthy. And then all that scarcity that goes with being stripped of everything, and that fear that you won't have something. Oh my God. And when we were looking at this, like we were going, oh, this is too freaky. But but we both felt it. And she goes, I think we were together. I said, well, I would agree with you there, because we have such an incredible connection. And I think we were divinely guided to be together, and for me to be working with you and you with me. We just have this amazing friendship and connection. But we go on to these conversations that are way wait, like, I don't even know how we get there. We
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
end
Oh,
up
I could
talking
see us
about
doing
stuff.
that. I could
Yeah.
see us going there, Helen. Yeah.
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 And you know that. And it's for people to trust that actually this life that we're living here and now, okay, that's okay. But
Yeah.
we can actually be living so much more than that if we just allow ourselves to just be open to all possibilities. Now, I'm not asking you to change your belief systems or whatever, but what I am saying is that I was so closed off and I had no idea that when I opened my heart, oh my gosh, my heart led the way. It brings people to me. It brings the most incredible experiences, and it's just about opening up.
Yeah.
And then that will take you on the journey that you need because we're all on different journeys. It's not for me to say what your journey is or for you to say what mine is. I don't know why I digressed with that, but it was kind of interesting.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the biggest lessons, like I said that before, but for me, some of the ahas, I had to stop doing and being in certain ways and really get on my soul, connect with my soul.
Yeah.
But we see people that are grieving or in hardship. And so much of my life, I just wanted to take it from them. I wanted to take that pain away from them. And when I couldn't take that pain away, it hurt my heart because I wasn't able to take it away. But what I learned was that I could hold loving space for people if I couldn't take it away. So everybody around me, I wanted to do everything and be everything for them. But
Mm.
in a way, I kind of got in the way of their journey. It wasn't
Exactly.
for me to take it. It was for me to be a loving presence. And that as much as I'm sure you talk to people all the time, or we want to take it. I knew when you were talking about opening your heart, when you open your heart, the give is endless. The
Oh,
love is endless. When you're not supposed to be doing it, it's coming from your body. It's coming from a different part of you. And that wears us down because then we end up carrying somebody else's weight that's not ours that they were supposed to carry to learn their lesson.
yeah.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful life. It is a really beautiful experience. Sure, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree 100% with what you've just said because one of the greatest expressions I learned was who owns this? If it is not yours to own, then step back, let it be. Because when people are ready, they will seek you out or seek whoever it is they need. But you can't jump in and rescue people
Right.
because often they're not in that space ready to be rescued or
Mm-hmm.
helped or guided or whatever it is that you want to do for them.
Mm-hmm.
I was so good at jumping in.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too. Me too.
yeah, and I had to
It was,
learn,
yeah,
not your problem.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's not in an unkind way. People just have their lessons to learn. And
yeah,
when they're ready to learn them and to open up, then they
yeah.
will find the way to do that. And I think it's been highly respectful of that. For any of our listeners listening who are in that deep grief now where they've just lost that super important loved one from their life and life just has no meaning anymore. It seems black. It seems like, what's the purpose for me here? Why am I going to take another step, without this person by my side? What tips would you have for them?
Boy, I think the best advice I can give is again going back to that word trust, trusting that you are not alone, trusting that they are walking with you, and trusting that if you ask for their presence to come and be with
Mm,
you, trust that it's there. I knew somebody that was really, really struggling with connecting with a loved one. And I knew that that loved one was available and there for that person. And I said, get a cup of tea and invite your friend to tea and sit down and have a cup of tea and talk to her as if she's sitting right there in the room with you and ask
yeah.
her the questions. Ask her the questions and listen. Ask the question and trust the answer because we are all hearing the communication. It comes in the silence and it's a word and a word and a word in within us. And if we just trusted that those words that we think are ours are truly coming from our loved ones in spirit, then they're thrilled too, because they're longing to connect. They're
Yes.
longing for us to accept, to believe, to accept, and to trust. They're longing. So that deep dark hole, I say it's important to experience the grief, to feel and express. And, remember that you're not alone, but the peace will come when you allow yourself to be open to receive the loving spirit that's trying to hug you and hold you and embrace you. And close your eyes and breathe in their spirit, breathe in their vision, and hug yourself and feel the love. Healing grief, it can seem impossible. It really can seem impossible at times. But then you wake up on the other side of the bed and you try to get through the next day and bless yourself every night for surviving the day until you're able to get through a couple days and a couple more and a couple more. It's hard, but when we were little kids, we had an imagination that would take us out of the dark places, when we had arguing parents or who knows what it was, but we could imagine being in a classroom we can't do algebra, but we can surely go off into la la land and imagine. I ask people that are really grieving to imagine and visualize and see things, see your loved ones and see your spirits and see yourself acting together with them. And trust it, like we trusted our imagination when we were younger. Trust yours to be real.
That's beautiful advice. Beautiful. And I like you. I want people to know that you are not alone. Your loved one and your loved ones are right there with you. They have not left you. And that was like my daughter. I couldn't imagine of my life without her. 18 years old, gone, bang, my only child. It was just her and I for 17 years. How does that happen? And then I just think, but she spoke to me. She wrapped me up. She spoke to me. She gave me the sign. She gave me so much. She said, because you're going to get through this. And she used to make me laugh because she'd say, you've got 5 minutes. 5 minutes to feel sorry for yourself, and then let's get on with it, okay? Oh, that's it. And then she used to call me a dork. Stop being such a dork, Mum. Because that was a phrase that she used all the time. So if you're hearing those phrases, that is truly your loved one connecting with you. And like you say, trust those voices. Oh my gosh, I could just keep talking.
I could too. And the other thing too with your daughter, think you surrendered to the trust and the belief that was truly her. And she wants to work with you, and our spirit and our loved ones, they want to partner with us. They want to help us. They want to help our families. They want to. The only thing that gets in the way of that is people not believing that they're connecting with them or that they're not there. You trust that they're there and you can do more together, because you don't want them on the other side the whole time picking you up and wiping your tears. They want to do other stuff.
Absolutely. They're living in joy, absolute sublime joy, and they want you to as well. And I'll share with you a quick story. I was interviewing somebody and I said, look, I do this podcast on my own. It's such a lot of work. And Tal jumped in to this other person I was talking to and went, no, she doesn't. I'm right there with her. What does she mean? She thinks she does this on her own. And it was like it was so tough. It was like, no, I don't think you do. Yeah, I know. So it was beautiful and a beautiful reminder. Yeah, and this is what I do to honor her. And it brings me joy every single time I get to talk to somebody like yourself. Cathy, we could just keep chatting, but I'm just going to finish off with 3 quick questions that I ask everybody. The first is, what is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
The best thing that's happened so far to me today is meeting you and being on this podcast. I feel like you're an amazing woman, and I'm so glad to have met you. And I feel really spiritually connected and at a level. So I think it was really divine that that we're here together today. So that was the most special thing.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm so grateful for you saying that. And I felt that straight off. As soon as your message came through, it was like I was connected with you. I knew your energy before I even knew you.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I feel I know you're just an incredible healer, and I'm so grateful and honored to be here and be a part of the work that you and your daughter are doing. It's pretty powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. What is something that you are most grateful for?
I am most eternally grateful for the connection that I have with Mary. She is my strongest guide. She is our spiritual mother. And as I trust that all things are good and that I will always be in good hands and that everything
No,
will work out.
no, what a beautiful presence to have around you. So, when you have moments in your day that are not going so well, how do you pivot out of those moments? What's your go to when it all turns to custard?
Good question. I always ask myself, back to your point, is this mine or somebody else's? Because the minute that I feel like I'm not in my personality, I feel like I'm off. I wonder maybe if I've picked up an emotion from somebody else that I was with earlier in the day. I ask myself why my mood's changed. What's happened? What is it? And if I really can't get out of it, I journal, I write. I ask myself questions. I go outside and I take a walk, and connecting with nature is one of my first go-tos that I do. I'll go ask a tree. I'll go do all the stuff that I never did for the majority of my life that I do now. And I go to spirit and I go to source and always just ask, is write me on my path. I just want to do your work. And typically when I find that I'm really off, it means that I've gotten out of alignment with myself, meaning that I've been making decisions that don't align with my purpose, my plan. I've gone to that fear-based and started to do things that weren't really good for me. Yeah.
And do you find that when we surrender to what this journey is for ourselves, that everything just falls into place?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Surrender, 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 and trust the process.
Yeah.
Everyone's presence. We all have a presence here that's really great and powerful. And whether it's big or small, or whether you've suffered or not suffered, or whether you've suffered to hell and back 1,000 times, no matter what, your presence is so valuable. Your light's valuable. You're making a difference in the world just by breathing and being here.
I
So,
know. Oh, that's such an important message because there's a
yeah.
lot of souls out there that don't feel that. And it's no accident anybody
Yeah.
is here. There's a
Yeah.
purpose. There's a, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It's
Yeah.
like the reason when I was standing next to my boyfriend for all those years, I just had to trust that my presence was enough.
Yeah.
That presence was enough.
Yes, he would have felt that too.
Yeah.
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 All the time. So I'm going to have all your links in the episode notes when the episode is released, but just share quickly with the listeners how they can reach you.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to reach people. They can reach me, CathyGabrielsen.com. They can
Mhm.
find me on Instagram at Cathy Gabrielsen. They can find me on Facebook at Cathy Gabrielsen Healing. Yeah.
Just
So
plug
thank
that
you.
name in.
Yeah. I know. That's my name.
And you've also got a free gift that you'd like to offer our listeners, which is a healing stone chart. How's that going to help our listeners?
How is it going to help? It's like a handy dandy chart of just tidbits on what they can do if they're feeling anxious or they're feeling depressed
Mm.
or they need just a little empowerment or they need to get over something. It's a nice little chart that offers little tips on what they can do and maybe some healing stones that might help to power them up and help them get along on their way back on their path.
Oh, thank you so much for offering that. Cathy, I am so grateful to you for sharing your first-hand accounts of your near-death experiences and shared death experiences and the tips that you've given us today and just the full, beautiful, open, honest conversation. It's come from the heart, your heart, my heart. And I am grateful to you. And what a privilege it is to have you on the beautiful side of grief and sharing your experiences with our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. If there's a topic you'd like covered, click on the beautiful side of grief at gmail.com link or go into the beautifulsideofgrief.com website where you can also leave a review. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button. And if you know of somebody who could benefit from this episode, please share. And until next time, please be kind to you and take good care.